Shunam soki chonam la janchu badu dagi kapsu chi dagi chuni gibe sonam gi dola benju sangye rupa sho. Shunam soki chonam la janchu badu dagi kapsu chi dagi chuni gibe sonam gi dola benju sangye rupa sho. Shunam soki choknam la janju bandu dani kapsuchi daki shiryin ipe sonam ki rola penchir sangye ruparsho. Good evening, Geshe-la.
Hello everyone. What's everything?
Wearing a headband.
Yeah, okay. Small thing, very good change. Anyway, it's a wonderful. We look at the meditation. First, the technically, the way to bring meditation is to jungle among calm and therefore just sit as comfortable as much as you can. The meditation and this plan. Normally, often something when you are doing the meditation, your mind also follow your how you feel. Awareness like that. Then, as we before study, Kama body, as you are familiar with that time, to keep your mind an object of the Buddha's image in front of you, try to focus on that. Okay? Hold it. You'll listen to my just okay, actions. Okay. It's not. If they're going to get you not.
Geshe-la nga yagushira kugumindu. Geshe-la di tinde digang kamen nasu di speaker na jig yorbe. Di kuji nga di yagu kugumindu. Tek chagdo yet siya Oda sebdo sujana. Nga amjo gang koya ju di ya kungi. Des chagmato. Oda kugudu da des chagdo sujana.
You guys here? Deborah, Jennifer, Deborah, and Mark. You guys are here?
So it's fuzzy. It's not very distinct. It's fuzzy.
I didn't know.
And not clear.
No.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Maybe better.
Oh, can this speaker put this way? From this down here. Yeah. You hear me now? Better?
Yes.
Much of the speaker.
How can you hear? Does it change anything? How about now?
It sounds hollow,
Oh,
Bob.
How about now?
Yeah, that's better.
no, this one stopped. That microphone stopped working.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not working now?
No, it's using this microphone now. This one is a little better, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, a little bit better.
Oh, this is not working.
The speaker is working on it, but the microphone on it is not working.
Can you guys talk? Someone, Deborah, say something?
Well, we want to be able to hear you. We want to hear the new translator too. So we're looking forward to this class tonight.
This one working. Okay, not. He's old translator. Can you hear now?
I think so. I mean, I need to talk a little more. I'm not sure.
Oh. How's the weather today? Do you have dinner? Do you have anyone has some ice creams?
It's not great. It's okay. It's just not as good as usual. Not the ice cream, but the sound.
Because this microphone is not working. That one is, the speaker is working, but the microphone is not working. Oh, it's muted. Try hitting the top again.
How about now?
Let me see.
How about now?
See if I can. Oh no, it's not connected to the computer for some reason.
How about now? 1, 2, 3.
No, it won't connect to the computer. I'm not sure what's wrong with it.
1, 2, 3.
Just switch it off and then switch it on. Sometimes that helps.
Try that.
1, 2, 3. Hello. This is what I have to do something here.
It's connecting. Has to get
Okay.
connected.
Okay. This is
Connected.
time to
Now
practice patience. How about now?
Yeah, it's a little bit better, but
Oh, yeah. Technical sound here.
Yeah, it's connected, but no
How about
microphone.
now? It's better. Oh, you guys, I want to talk very specifically. You guys doesn't hear me. I said, oh, this doesn't work, right?
No, it's not.
No, it's
Can
not.
you hear me now? Okay, if you don't connect this one here, what happens? So you put that. Oman Bema, recite Oman Bema.
That's what I'm doing.
Ah, you doing that?
that you don't do it.
Yeah, you can hear.
Oh,
But the technically how good.
That's all.
It's okay.
We could just choose the iPad.
Or you could just put the iPad.
You could just use the mic on the iPad and just not.
But it'll connect the speaker and the iPad.
Okay. 딱 그거네.
That's 지난 누구도 Geshe-la.
신발도 돼. 야, 나 상황들이 시간에 고삼을 고삼을.
기타한테 Geshe-la 그 워드야 디 가면 아니 이제 세브 싶지 그것도 디스래 Geshe-la 워드 와질래 미치게 계지셔도 꼭 빼세요도.
Is Bob, your sound very clear.
So
I sound clear?
Yeah, can Geshe-la share whatever the speaker or microphone that you're speaking to? Yours is coming out very clear.
Because I'm sitting closer to the camera.
Have you-
It's the camera's microphone.
I see. So the camera is picking it up.
Make the camera
No problem. Geshe-la give me
You can push camera.
Yeah, we can bring the camera closer.
The camera in the wide.
Yeah.
Okay. That is
Not too short.
Good, it's much better. It's better, right, everyone?
How about you guys? It's better?
Yes.
Yes. But this doesn't catch. No, Zoom, we lost Zoom. Zoom people lost.
Just the mirroring.
Where's the
We're,
Zoom people?
we're still here. We're still here.
The TV is not connected. Oh, no, it's the
Just the
TV.
mirroring.
Okay, now you come back. Good. Thank you.
Hooray.
Thank you, Bob.
Technology.
You have that,
And the peanut gallery.
perfectionist here. That is your rose,
야친 게 싫어 야친소.
but it doesn't stop.
Can you hear me?
Okay, be patient.
What happened on Saturday and I just came back.
Okay. That is your rose.
도도도 싫어 야친소. 평균 당고도 말이야 싫어 그거면도 다 야친소.
그래, 일단 남주에 내 배치다 그래. 니는 내가 지어서 말아.
라서. 그럼도
오케이.
Geshe-la 다 농담도 나디 세브 그거도. Geshe-la 나디나 파 생고도 왜.
저한테 빼앗거든.
라서.
Your sounds very clear. 아니, 잡아도 연나. 걔는 그래, 잡아도 연나.
나디 빼지 매. 디 카라스는 나디 내가요. 관다. 그런 Geshe-la 디 그순도 맞퇴는 사으로 하고 오면 주디 남들 락자이면 내 게임도 지단데 디도 니디 도도도도도 세션을 봐.
야, 내가 와서 빼자 따먹고 지켜는 거래.
제.
야, 오케이. 아니, okay. It's good. I think good, Bob. Thank you. Now I have the 3 Bobs, 2 Bobs. Bob, I have 3 Bobs here. Can you hear?
You gotta do everything.
You can hear, right? Good. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is to, study a little bit how to be patient. The technology, this thing's above us. We cannot much control, right? If that doesn't want to walk away where you want, then we have not much to do. 안에 다지나 당도 계산 딩엘야 아니 신의곰 다른 당도 한도가 갖고마 안에 다 쉬도록 봐.
So in our previous sessions, we started the become abiding, Shine Samatha, Shamatha, and now we start looking into the inside practices.
장 내기 따와 간제 안에 동반이지 따 엄마 타랑기 딱 간제 따와 쳐줘도 시기래 안에 나 생겨 갖고 쳐봐 시기 말해 개대시지나 내려오지 고 말해.
So when we're talking about the shunyata, in the as part of the Insight chapter, it follows the Parasankhika philosophical system, which is the really touching on the most subtle nature of the existence, or the how things exist. And I think this is very hard to really get into this very subtle the nature of the phenomenon's existence. It's very hard to explain. It's very hard to also comprehend this particular subject.
이마다 당도 소소한 데콜에 도나이 왔던지 당도 추존의 시바이나 개월납치 못 사그레스 라비오레.
So from the Dharma practice point of view, even you pay attention to the subject, it really enables us to generate a huge merit.
제자 드리바자 강들 말아서 또 제가 삼로당이야. 아니 수수 나도 제가 나 세지다 네 세는 거데 나로 제대로래.
So if we think about it, we really spend a lot of time thinking about I, myself, and so on.
다지는 것도 단네 걸리 막 그러잖아. 네 나세야 돼 나라서 로라 간지 작은도 아니 문이가 접단데 간지 접도 다네 걸라 지와치요래.
So the most importantly, in this part of the really studying, we are looking at the self, how self arises in our mind, and how it is established, and how it appears to us.
아니 다네 가르는 그래 가르치와에서 와이나 남도들라 다 대상가서 담을라야 지까지 잠을 봐. 게소소이나리 토바이나리 가니 온데한테 또 안전데 슈 체자고 되는 거래.
So if we look at all the problems, the faults in this world, it basically comes from this very strong attachment to this self-grasping.
근데 다도 전에 다보가는 나세지 간디션 때말 가상 빼셨다 다 빼셔라 담보지 간도 전 소소상도다 나세지 가와체고도 삼로다네 수수 미데 자데 빼나 제너퍼 밥밥세나 다 텐디 제너퍼 가wan도 밥도 가wan도 되네 소소 미데 로라 샤바치네 소소지 차이다 다 두전에 근데 생내 맛이 같은 경우도 고말해 고도문도 가네 야만한 것도 나 자사카라야 로 뉴스 숨적 깔에 잠이 저게 좀데 단제 잠고를 레라오시는 말에 내가도 대만 진이 전에 내가도 트는 마 지시 되네요 소소 공잡 샘르지 차선도 셔도가나 아니 디스플레이먼트.
So when we look at this the nature of the self, we have to examine where is this I or this person. Where is Bob? Who's Bob? Who's Jennifer? It's really very hard to comprehend and understand this teaching by merely reading and studying. If you really wanted to have a comprehensive understanding about this subject, you really have to spend a lot of time. That's what we do in the monasteries. Unless you really dedicate a huge chunk of time, it's really hard to get the root of this by just merely reading.
제다가도 다시 가지라 나 세제 소소를 로를 쳤대요데 쳤던 가리지 작은도 가wan도 따이는 것도 저도 검잡셔.
So we just have to investigate how this self or I appears to us. And we're going to meditate on this, really meditating how this self arises, or how this self appears to us. We're going to do investigation of it.
나도 부모 야만나 소소 미 되네 파따 빠다 따섬지 지 코라도 눈이 저대에서 그러지 Nga lili saji tendeji ta soso ya la wa ina ma nye wa ina ta mulum tsimchim bu choma tsi tsami ila tendeji yungo yo yamri. Na ta tinga du musu te kale ka yori.
So when we investigate this self, although this is just, self is labeled and designated, merely designated, but for us, even, for all the animals, including ants, and to all, beings, when we think about this self, we have this incredibly concrete, like a steep, appearances of the self to us, and we feel this like a heavy object when we think about me, my, or self.
Wada tendeji nga di kandeji chinato ta soso nga do gomte jade soso la soso kawana do soso la soso kandeji shakando mu kande samu te gomte ina.
Therefore, we're going to meditate, and the subject of the meditation is really to investigate where is this self that we so, like strongly identify with? Where is it? Who is it? And to really pinpoint this, a strong, solid sense of self.
Okay? We do a little meditation, okay? Try to identify yourself, how you hone yourself, how you find yourself. Yeah. 다 남주 패션의 제반은 된지 수수 로에 차다 말고 숨겨라 말이지.
So in the scripture and the text, it is described that there are three different ways of seeing or feeling this self. There are three different ways, that we really conceive this self.
대차잖아. 동반지 따와 jel라 제 선비 강사 대기 아니 나 세트 나도 지요레스.
So the first one, those individuals who realize the emptiness, shunyata, they have a way of perceiving the self.
다 드네 지가 아니 지가 정태 로카 마쇼이. 된지 강사 지 덴바 트먼도 야지 탄제 그런 마시기 된지 기로로 샤서 지요레스.
Then those people who studied the philosophical system, and they have a way of perceiving, the self through the influences of their study.
마 대텐도 봐. 정태 로카 마쇼지.
Oh, sorry, opposite of that. So those people, individuals who are devoid of influences from the philosophical system, they have a way of perceiving self.
다 대기 지금 마다 맞거든요. 지금 강사 생각해서 열로를 차려요. 다 대기 차르데 약속도 잘. 다대 타이도 요와 말. 대창일로 대체마 차대요.
좀 더 magyubde.
아 저들로 맞지 맞지. 대마트마로 타냐 거로 매왔지. 다 내다지 빼나 바준데레 땅데레 랑고데레 사이즈 거 타니 자기로 와. 오다데 타니데 옆에 이유더라고 나요. 남자들이 다대 두서 약속들이스. 대로 테마 줘.
And so it is, the best way of defining self is really the experiences or the perceptions of those people who are, free from the philosophical system, and the way they feel what self, the way they perceive and conceive the self is what we consider as the conventional, the sense of the self. It is the best way of explaining what is the conventional self is the experiences of those people who did not, influence or under the influence of the philosophical system.
대결아 그래 대바도 대대 수치모 제가 말에 대매요 또 말에 그때 빠라도 이랬고 어떤 일이 지래 상관없이.
So this is because for those people who are not under the influences of the philosophical, traditional system, they are, neither extreme defenders of the self, nor the opposite, or not denying the self, and so they're pretty much in the middle.
어떤 텔레 타니데 이거 말아 그래. 대 아니 다 레디 히트 지금 마대고 대상이 그래.
And so these people see this the self according to like the common sense.
그래 다 심바티 아니 다 덴바 못나 매도 그래. 제가 덴바 팀인가 아니 하는 거 봐. 요래 선배 다 대대 차다 요래.
就是讲的的人家说了今年ความ是这咋的你说钱呢？不对。
심바티 덴바 맞점나 매바 차도 그래. 덴바 trouble 그래. 대신다 랑문의 팀인가 선배 강사 로지로 어다 대다 대대 차다요. 대도 놀줘들이.
And then this somebody, right? So the third one is people feel unless the self is established inherently, then there is no sense of self at all. And they're defending this like a self. They're saying the self has to be inherently exist. So for those people who really fear that unless the self, unless we're able to establish the self intrinsically, and then it will become, selflessness or the no self. And for fear of that, so they're holding on to this intrinsically established self. Therefore, for those people who follows this view of a self intrinsically exist, so this is what we call like a perverted view. Geshe is confused, but same tubes, right? So this is a mistaken view of the self. So this is when we say first identifying the object of the negation. And this is the object of the negation, this mistaken view of a self, being this intrinsically exists self.
Okay. 제가 배전은 지나서 배전은 누구만하고 숨겨서 담보대 담에 돈이 또배 가사 나한테 다 될 요렇게 요 말에 대 밥에 가서 나한테 대 요렇게 매웠지 담보들 요렇게 매웠지.
So in the text, it's basically giving you three types of the perception about the self. The first one is the self appears to those who realizes emptiness.
그래. 다 telling 다 니바 대고 대만 좀을 점다가 타니 강하면 가지 다 나서야 돼. 강사돼야 돼. 곧 소소 발로지 따내 지 타니도 옆에 가서 대도 다고 대우라요 말해.
And then the second type of the perception of self is those who are pretty much free from following any philosophical systems. And they're just kind of looking self in association with, aggregates. So this is, like a more like a common sense self or the conventional self.
Okay. 다 요로 사이도 슈마데 라 타마데 다 랭은 트고 랭은 다 덴버 트고 마찬데 메와 차도 레사 벨로지라 와다 텔다 dances.
So the first two types of the perception of the self is not too, too problematic. But the real problematic, perception of the self is those who are following certain, the schools of the, philosophical system, and who believes that unless you're able to establish the self, then it becomes non-self, and that, perception of a self is mistaken. And this is what we need to really study well, understand well.
드네다도 제도나 아니 다 나들 레체사지로 나들 레체사 단다기 나도 되게 지수 짱이다 아니 난 조이 나 클래스에 나 되게 되게 딱 나도 슈체체 연구.
So with that, when you have this very strong sense of innate, like grasping of self, and once you have this like self-grasping at a very deep, like a conscious level, the innate level, and then that really produces a lot of problem, including creating attachment and so on.
다 맞다 맞지가지 그게 가지 있는 하울머스 배워지 고다르 코데레 잠비 콜라 따지에 개 맞지가지 되게 춤바시네 야 난도도 건너가 신지요 대고 니가 좀 보셔요 말해.
So then there is this type of perception of self. People who just without too much investigation or convictions or reasons, people simply just had a kind of awareness of self. Oh, this is Howard. Howard's not going this way. And just like someone who have, just awareness, but not too strongly associated with any reasons and philosophy. So that's also okay. That's, it's not really major problematic.
그래 다 조조된 난도 슈첨보셔 대라 때네 아니 라나 첩이 첩보다 전화되면 또 슈첨보죠 다 띵노래서 그러와.
So the main problem is for those individuals who had this very strong sense of self, who really kind of mistakenly view this like a intrinsically established self. When you have that view, then what happens is that you become very attached to yourself, and also you have very strong revulsions to others. And so this what creates the hate, like a attachment, at the same time, like a hatred. And that comes from this strong attachment to this sense of self, believing that it, exists intrinsically.
오케이 단티나도 되게 가사 소소 나도 쓰면은 자주 딱 보면 되죠. 소소 가게 돼 태워도.
So I want you to really meditate and investigate to see which, perception of the self that we described out of three that you are, or you can identify with.
딱 나도 담보대 덴바 맞으면 또 봐야자 아니 덴바 맞으면 또 베토네 가다 나치고 다 델라 아니 권유하시라 요 말.
So the first one is those individuals who are, who realized, emptiness. And because of that, there's no problem with the self. There's not a major problem.
생각도 나도 말다. 생각도 용어고 말와.
So that's, it may not be, something that we can identify with.
다 이빠데 아니 그 덴바 트머를 되게 타니에 코라 하마고 같이 딱 가사 세대 딱 가세대 내려서 비 근데 일로나 샤니 디도 그 아니 지금 로도 갈아도 되게 타니에 그 처럼 대화지도 되나도 지걸.
And then the second type of a perceiver of a self is that you really are not influenced by these philosophical systems. But
다 녀로 사실도 담아들래. 다 나지 고군데 맨날 강사 따술 따고 따사데 맨날 매주군데 와서 되게 특례전에 다 녀로 사실 되가 아니고 나지 강사 또배 따는 강사 소리는 따고 그래. 따사데 고군데 와서 쟤는 따사데라는 건 좀 고군데 와. 대머리다 매주군데 와서 다 저마도 샘som마도 어머라지 녀로 사실 되는 거다.
So the major, really, the problem is for those who strongly believe that there has to be an object or a subject that can be identified as a self. And they believe if you're not able to identify an object, a subject of a self, then there are many problems because you cannot associate some of these like connected activities or others. So this is exactly the debates going between the mind-only schools as well as some of the middle-way school followers, where they sometimes differ in their view about the perception about self.
Good.
I got it.
Good. Okay, now the meditation. Okay, which was more you can feel? Okay, the 3 times. I think first one maybe we just forgot. It's beyond us. But second and third, how more comfortable are you with not just any discussion for any the object or the I, just that's me just. If you say okay, I feel the Geshe-la. Oh yeah, what do we see? This Geshe-la, not looking for it here or whatever. Okay, total meditation. Okay, which one you got it? Howard, are you sleeping there?
No, I think the one, I'm trying to think, I think the one I kind of relate to more is, it's hard to put it in the words, but thinking, whether you exist or not exist, it's how you exist, just not getting caught up in the different pieces. If that makes sense. It's hard to put it in the words at this point.
You have some experience, that's good. Maximum Jameshara Prabhupada said that.
So this is what one of the Buddha's phrases. I forgot the Sanskrit for it. This is a perfection of a wisdom, and that cannot be explained. That cannot be taught. That cannot be perceived.
제가 맨날 말도 다 실로라 전달로 맨날 샤시오다 소라 안에 소소 맨날 내게 보이 내가 내게 보고 딴내 소속은 남이 야만 내 소속이 나도 저 대다 나라서 맨날 단다 전달로 주세 나도 좀 장말해.
No. So when you think about the differences between the perception of the self among the animals, and the perception of the self among the people who are following particular philosophical system. it differs significantly.
저도 콘솔지랑 타니디에 나마도 나랑 랭으로 하는 거 말. 거기서 타니디에 봤던 게 나서 이빠지고 거기서 대나대요다.
So for the animals and for ordinary beings, for them, the appearances of the self is just like a conventional. They, like following this like a convention, the conventions of how people describe, but long.
타니디에 봐봐. 다 먼저 점대로 제스가들한테 다 대바트고 말했으면 나한테 찔래 그래. 다 대바트 말을 듣던 간대이 봐. 텐하도 찔래. 다 요로 사주는 것도 용돼 그래.
So the third one is perceivers of the self that follows a different philosophical system. For the individuals who follow the different philosophies of the philosophical systems, it's a major problem. This is because each, hold a different, a strong, and the views of a different lines of the philosophical system.
제가 타니도 옆에 가서 대다 아니 현재 간다더니 지금 좀 제대로도 되죠. 저거 되게 그래.
So the conventional followers of the self-belief or the self perception and the innate the self-grasping. Sometimes there is the core emergencies, and you see them. They emerge. They inseparable.
다 되네 카시고 다 아니 타니도 옆에 가서 아니 나들 현재가 듣다니까 클래스 오셔고 대셔마다야 나도 가정에서 또 말이.
So we have to really separate the conventional, the perceptions of the self and Tanya ngada ngandil hengi rwa.
못되니 카시고다.
We have to separate, the perceptions between the following the conventional labeling and then following this innate, self-grasping self. And I apologize because I don't know what your translator uses the terms. Maybe it's harder for you to understand when I'm using different terms and terminologies to what you have in the textbook. I don't have my Lamrim Namdulakja with me today, and I'm confessing I haven't read it for a while. So I'm just so I don't remember what the English terms that the other or the Kurukulla Center follows. So correct me sometimes especially when you have a clear term that everyone understands, and I can repeat that.
Doing very well, Tenzin.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the term, but there's innate self-grasping, and then it might be intellectually acquired self-grasping. Is that what we're talking about?
얘네들 잘못 말해.
Innate, so the Lhengi, right? Yes, the innate one, that's in Tibetan, the Lhengi one. And then Tanye is pretty much usually used conventional, but I don't know what the translation of the Namdrung Lagzhe uses. That's my question. In your textbook, what? Because each translators, sometimes they rely on heavy Sanskrit terms without, defining. Sometimes they have their own. So I wasn't sure in translation what term they're referring to. And you can just drop this in the chat box. Would be very helpful. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, 이제 다 도저 다된 다 나올. 다 된데 나한테 링킹은 주세된 나도 저라 가디 나도 뭐였으면나 나도 야무나 세만 남다라고 가래. 야무나 미지 차가 미처럼 둘자리에서 저런 예버 줄 거래. 야무나 미치 수술 빼 가오져 된데 가면 딱 무슨 거래서.
Okay, inner self, yes. So the thank you, Bob. This is very helpful. The inner self-grasping experiences is most obvious when we go through extreme experiences, like either when we're extremely happy, that innate self-grasping, is become obvious, or when we are extremely upset, that, time of the event, the innate self-grasping becomes very strong. So at that time, you can really identify it.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that the three examples, the three people that you gave, that was for intellectually acquired self-grasping. I mean, at least the text suggests that.
Yeah, let's the text one.
Okay, so that was,
Yeah,
those
that's
three are
three
just
words.
for the intellectually acquired self-grasping,
Yeah.
not the innate self-grasping.
가로 담아내 into what you said?
The three persons that you
Yeah, the
described.
second one for the 니바의 탄이대 왔더라. 탄이대 변화한다.
So the second one is here conventional or intellectually acquired self-grasping. The Tanya so the intellectually acquired self-grasping is the second types of the perception of the self. The first one is people who realizes the shunyata, right? A
Because
first
it's
group of.
all
So I'll just
three.
clarify this. The first group of individuals who have the perception of the self is those who attend or realize the emptiness. That's the first one. So now the second one is I'm going to use this term intellectually acquired self-grasping. But Tanyeliya takanda kasure.
나도 간이로 시작했어.
So this is the second part of the type of the group of people who, for them, self is intellectually acquired. It's not really the Tanye's use the Geshe-la Geshe-la kontu details jimuso. Let me check. I'm looking at
I'm sorry, Tenzin. Do you have, Tenzin, do you have liberation in the palm of your hand by any chance?
You can do that.
Okay, so it
December.
says,
Yeah.
yeah, it says in,
three types.
yeah, there's three types, in general, there's three ways of grasping intellectually
Yeah.
at the I based upon the person. And then it gives the three examples that you gave, the one who has,
Understand emptiness.
yeah, and then also the one who's not influenced by tenants, who
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
really
good.
care.
That's good. Yeah.
And then the third one is the one who is, who has been, influenced by tenants.
Yeah.
But they're saying all three of those are intellectually acquired. And that would make sense, right? Because if you were influenced by tenants, that would be that's not the innate self-grasping that, for instance, even animals have.
그래서
The translation for the second type of person shouldn't be intellectual, it should just be conventional. But the text also uses conventional later.
Yeah. So that's what's confusing with this. Okay, can you So the first one we have no doubt. It's basically people who realize the shunyata, right? So the second the second one, the translation process, second one is the Tanya. So conventionally, the second one is what I translated as those people who conventionally believe, right? There's a self without any strong influences from philosophical tenets or system.
The exact words are the way ordinary people whose mind streams have not been influenced by tenets grasp the I. This manner of grasping at the I is found in persons who couldn't care less whether or not the I can be established by its nature.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
and then the third one is the opposite of that. People who follows, certain philosophical tenets and establish their own belief, either going into exists like a intrinsic nature of the self, or going into the other side, which is like nihilistic. So that's the third one. But the confusion state here is when Geshe-la saying that the nyogde kwachunso Geshe-la tande di shivjik chakoson chije wa dene nyogde chunso Geshe-la hengiege tande nganzi jorba dida tanye도 suna digi tanye ta injinale ke Geshe-la di sunda tande ngazo hengiege nganzi jorba
삼점 렌체겐 대산다 탄이되는 대산 되니 노트 그래서 그냥 저원 삼점 제조 그래서
그때 디 tanye도 nganzi zinya di ngazo rimba nibu 들ba 님부디나 때디로 림부 니버기 땅아주 타니엘야다 디스니
나세 삼수지로
나스니디다 행기즈 달 행기디 디게 숨는 가발 추고 와다디레 달 행기에게 뭔지 삼다니에 줘봐 디게 당주
현재
림부디네 가발
현재도 다 차단은 되대.
숨졸
가서 다 담보도 그 되면 또 살아 봐. 그걸 현재 거 요마로.
레레레
아니 봐도 선반이나 건드려다. 현재다.
Okay, now I got, okay, now I'm clear. Good. So basically, so we are clear that we identify the three types of self-perceiver, right? One with those shunyata realization. Second, those conventional, the self-grasping. The third one is those who are influenced by the tenets. So these three, we have no problem. So then there's one extra element, which is the inner self-grasping, right? The inner self-grasping happens both the second and the third group. The experiences of the inner self-grasping, happens to people who are, like just merely conventionally following the sense of the self, as well as people who are driven by the influences of the tenets. And so Geshe-la explains when that happens, when does the power? When you're either extremely excited or when you're extremely sad, at that time, then that experience of the inner self-grasping becomes so obvious. Sorry, is this clear now?
제가 담보디니만 담보디가 다지를라고 덴바트와 나나 그 나마다 덴바트로 삼도 요마리 제가 그 라지 마트와 또베 가사 나나 지고래.
So the first one, although the appearances of the phenomena, but although it merely appears to them like an object exists, but by their understanding about the nature of the phenomena, and they knew it does not intrinsically exist.
이것도 선반이 아니 딱 네가 지금 이보다 선반이 되는데 노라 차이도 선반을 해요.
So the problem is for the second and the third types of the self-perceiver, especially it's for the third types of the perceiver, where there's a kind of a very strong misguided sense of self through the philosophical tenets, the training of the philosophical tenets.
오케이. 다 덴리가에 딱 그러잖아. 야무다 딱 가와 두바 덴리가 탄지쇼 데리오데 가라야. 아니 야무다 되게 깨셔발라 때네 아니 수술로 지라야지. 나들레지 슈 쳇지 깨주네. 아니 되게 더 따라 수술 삼다고 그래. 스탑해자 걸마 이랬대요.
So basically to really understand this sense of the self, first you really have to trigger this strong sense of self, and either thinking about extreme experiences of a fear, and as you experience this very strong fear, I just added the a fear, and then it's become easy to identify this inner grasping self, like under extreme sense of fear, you can feel this like a strong sense.
오케이. 아니 몇 가장 지라 뭐지 람바도게나 아니 수술로 빨아야다 람바라다고 뒤서로 있고다.
So 불랑가 두 소소 록발레 미데 랑가레 데스.
라이브다 람바에 못 뒤서로 있어. 소소 난저 등나 슈체보던데 야 슈체다 뒤근데 찍다. 아니 뭐니 가디 뭐니 가리지요 찍다고.
So as you really are exposed to this extreme fear or and experiences, which really bring this strong, like a sense of self, then what you have to do is in your meditation, you look what does feel like, what is this, sense of the strong self, and who's really identifying this. One example here they use is when you're or taking a journey, you're talking to your friend, looking at your friend. At the same time, you're also keeping an eye on your path. Likewise, you're looking at these like experiences. At the same time, you're looking at the looker.
And there is something that
So when you meditate, that sometimes you get very close to this self, and then sometimes it totally disappears. So this sense of the self arises, and then also it kind of declines.
다 들리죠. 다 남들 나한테 도와주세요. something. 공부 뛴다고 해야 돼. 사실 니도 된대로 샤고 대샤를 하고 다다요 말이지.
And then sometimes you feel this sense of self is in your head, sometimes at the heart, but in reality, it doesn't exist in either places.
다 드니 다 네가 다주 대샤를 가서도 단다. 마크도 좋아. 다 케케 요 말에 시세네. 가지 다주대 타니는 니네 용거는 내가 배자 먹는 타니 요 말에 가지 드니 가다데 술라 아니 따와레스 드니가 따주 대라 또는 가로 다주데 리다 셈 따주 마시베네 토바티는 다 날릴리 바로시 티 토바 춘투 쳐바로시 다 내내지 또 사마로지 소소로 저때마다 다 가자데 무슨 또 그래서 차서지.
So as Mark mentioned last week, when we're investigating this self, then we really have to start looking the basis of this label. Where is this basis of the label? Is it our body? And when you're able to identify, so, okay, my kind of a basis of the label for self is this, and then that is the object of the negation. Once you're able to identify the basis of the self for you, and then this is what we call the object of negation, and then we have to really do the counter reasoning to clear that this is a mistaken view, and so on.
Okay, I'm going to read a text. Can you see going like that way?
Yeah.
I'm going to follow the text.
이
Okay.
등기대 가라던데 앤드루를 지가 라가장도 좋아지도 더 콘친스.
Copy this.
Andrew, I think you raised a hand, right?
Yeah, I had a quick question. Is the third view similar to eternalism? I mean, the belief that like there's a permanent, like I guess like in Abrahamic religions, there's a permanent soul, but I guess we could put in terms of a permanent object. Like for example, what's come to mind is when I get angry at like a coworker who seems lazy, I'm thinking not of their good qualities. I'm giving into like the self-cherishing of they are just lazy. They are inherently lazy rather than seeing like the whole picture. Is that going along with what I'm trying to say is when I'm like making a judgment of a person, is that like not giving in, that's not seeing emptiness, that's seeing that that person is permanently that when they are much more than that.
I was talking to Miss Hazel.
Sorry, I'm talking to my colleagues and also the chronic disorder that 저기 면직이 거야 디체베급이야 대교용 가려야 그래서 주로 양다나 이는 아주 소ul 체제 베드 피해 아주 독도 더시직 차고 다디 디르 숨부디날야 주고도가 그래서는 아주 인지날야 다디 벽안날야 타니에 유나면은 베드 소ul 체제 베드 다 체제 혼자 랭싱 드롭직이야 지고 봐 근데 이제 그래 진짜 다 숙심 무슨 예체 아니 쿠란도 준비는 나는 뷰크란 단데 레가 체베급이야 쿠란 그 레로도 직대에서 레로다 진짜 인도 엠페 콘트사임도 레로도 레고도 야고 마셔줘 레르시도 잠바다 딩네 콘도 세도 잠바다 피게지 가소래 레르치니에 저봐 그런 게 레로 저봐 디 따지 그 랭싱그 예부 잡아지 통구도 이네디 그런 디따다 넘어서 디 인도 잠바 디토네 땅 알아도 지금 넘기는데 치어다 된대가 좀 마시고 좀 피게지 팔을 링링야 예부지 자유도 그런 콘도 저봐
어때샤가 대샤가 다 티가라 다 단서세야 돼 간서세야 휴지 못 되게 샤 댄서세야 샤요래.
So yes, when you mentioned that when you have a colleague, who doesn't do what he's supposed to do, and you get really angry, that is the moment, this particular moment of that, like a strong, emotion, and this is where, and then you feel this like innate self-grasping experiences. You are experiencing this like innate self-grasping, and then you really look, how does this arises? And who does this, belong to, or whether this, experience of the strong sense, is this part of you or is it separate, how it exists, and then you have to investigate.
Okay, I think we stop like that, not to go too much. Can you take out a Michi, Kodo shoes and Tika Chan, the middle of that, meeting the matter of the death shoes.
When you are really in a very strong emotional state at a person, and during that time, you also see that person, like this very solid, like a self-grasping of that person, and you feel that that person is a solid, of the strong sense.
아니 며칠 전 조금만 봐 조금만 저서는 나 그만 잠에서 나도 쉬우셔라 어디가 나도 쉬우셔 지게라 말했어.
Another experience of the strong self-grasping is someone else accusing you, saying you are a thief, and as soon as somebody labels you as thief, you become very strong kind of emotionally, right? And at that time you experience this very strong self-grasping.
어떤 뒤값 난한테 대단 탄이되면 나한테 파 따지지네. 근데 그걸 컨디션도 공대고 그래서 나가요.
Then the text said that when you are in the moment of this very strong self-grasping mind, and at that time, then you should really examine. You examine the second group, the Tanyed, or then the Digelya and Tanyelya.
탄이도 옆에 나서 뭐 다다다 된데 다도 좀 듣더니 딱 가가 셔도보다.
Tanyed Yube.
탄이도 여러 말
Tanyed Yube 다다 좀 다니 때다 파가 임 하고 그래서. 지금 좀 쉬운데, 근데 Tanyed 맛에 지금 배도 오네고 다 이게 삼사주고 봐.
어디 다도 들다 하고.
다니시나 하고 그러다가 전기팀 당고도 계시라 디스 해보 거주면. So now I had a better understanding. So basically when you are going through an extreme emotional experiences, right? Either someone accusing you of doing something wrong, and then this really trigger a very strong sense of a self-grasping mind. That very strong, sense of the self-grasping mind, and if you look with the conventional, like the people, people who just, conventionally follow without any investigation of the self, just, oh, there's a self, me, whom, and then you can see the differences, right? You kind of moved from conventional perceiver of the self to this extreme, this innate, like self-grasping experiences. And can you see the differences? Geshe-la's point is there is the differences between just like a second type of the self-perceiver to the person who's going through this incredibly emotional, experiences through identification with the self. So they're two different things. Can you see the two differences? But that was the very first time I had a problem understanding Geshe-la, and now I got a better understanding.
제가 남중 나도 나 기워도 나 기워면 나 로이 나도 나도 탄이도 여러 번 로도 제가 여러 봤어. 저까지 나도 여러 봤어.
So conventionally, like we experience, happiness, we experience or we feel like we're going, we're doing something. Conventionally, it's there.
이나 땅도 가두고 저 휴점을 내고 가야 대래 하빠지는 선물. 다 되니 나한테 강한 무시하고 제거.
But then when we go through experience, extreme experiences of, happy up or down, at that time we get this very strong sense of self. So that self, now you can see differs with the conventional here. Yes. So there's a differences now. One is like you experience this extreme sense of self because of the, experiences or exposures you got into certain emotion. Compare that with the ordinary, the conventional, sense of the self, there's a differences, right? And that we should be able to distinguish first.
제가 따뜻 빼잘로 근데 소소 삼로탄 빼잘로 삼로탄에 다 같이 도구나.
So you can distinguish this through studying, meditate, or contemplate and study and contemplate on the subject you just studied. Through that, you'll distinguish between this like a conventional, perception of the self to this extremely strong self-grasping mind.
이나다 대레라고 이가도 전담바와 시 되냐 타라는 게나 요다 자유다 내가 용도겠다.
So for the 4 different, the schools of the Buddhist tenets, this is where the major basis of discussion and the differences of the, belief on this. So that's, it's a really very complex subject for all of the 4 different Buddhist traditions.
다 들리셔도 된지가 만들 현재 대용다 대대 파 아니 저도 삼로탄에 가라야 아니 땡제에서 되고 삼로탄에 봐 아니 신의 고안이야 이거서 봐.
So when you have this very strong sense of a self-grasping mind, and so really counter that, like a mistaken view, is relying on the philosophy of dependent arising.
먼저 배나 접다대 배나 서투기는 좀 고라들 법지 샤려서 그러는데 다 놀거든 먼저 서투기는 접다 제단 제체 가는 서투까지 가지고 코로나 나오면 접하러 오시 그다음 나도 지금 비자는 어떤 날로 오시 혈하고 뒤져오러 오시 그래서 난 거서 다 대나다대 너는 지금 맵이 걸고 다대 제단 제나 차시에 지 때문에 나는 때에서 고아용 거로 봐.
So for us, like we get this flash of like a belief or perceptions about how things exist. Like we just like get a flash of this very strong sense of self, and then with that, what we have to do is we have to rely on the philosophical tenets, and to really investigate how this exists, and you can refute or you can really correct this mistaken view.
제가 되게 나들 해지는 남주고 헬레요가 그나 저거 말고 헬레야지 대신 저거 말 타지 되면 나한테 배치다니 저들 다고 남자는 나도 가고도 아릴라 지금 마음이 다도 그래 나신을 갈사지도 나시 남지 땅 조조시 어디로 그 잘못들이 그 뚝쳐줘 되는다 나도 해지해야 돼 가지고
So in our kind of ordinary experiences, what I meant by ordinary is not under certain kind of influence of the stress. You just like maybe this is correct to use the intellectually, acquire the self-grasping. You just like follow the conventional without too much investigation, and there is no strong sense of self-grasping, at a work, right? But it's still hiding behind, just like the National Guard, or the National Reserve. It's ready to launch, but it's sitting at the back, always sitting at the back, this very strong sense of grasping. It only kind of flashes or triggers under certain kind of experiences.
제가 남주 타니 남중어도 타니 되고 나한테 배치 당신 딱 가두고 쳐 들으려고 하니까 그때 나들 해지도 휴지 뭔가 전에 다 휴지 못 없으면 아니 다때 아니 내가 때네 잠깐 그거 기억 걸어.
So in our day-to-day experiences, we just have a the conventional understanding or the beliefs of the self or intellectual level, and it doesn't become very strong. But as soon as we are under duress or under influences of certain extreme emotional experiences, and then that triggers this like a strong self-grasping mind, this innate self-grasping
서로
mind.
자 디콜라 곰잡 삼노다 소소 냠노다 나디 가디 슈치엔 소지랑 나한테 슈 가디 체게도 디체는 남주 나 배제한다 그런 디콜라 삼노다 곰잡 삼노다 곰잡 데니가로 가르치고도 소소 년년에 토하다 잡다가나 근데 신이 나도 고안이야지만 다들 마치 트모로도 너도 고만.
So, usually, I think a true understanding and the application of these, tenets is you study and then you meditate. Whatever you just started, you really meditate, contemplate, and then do investigation, analyze, and then go back to the text again, study, and then you contemplate. As you do that, then you can, for example, easily differentiate the intellectually acquired self-grasping versus the innate self-grasping experiences. You can easily see the differences between the two. That's one example.
Right, like how is it? Something say, oh, I don't like that. Immediately, from that time you're very strong. Usually I'm Harvard. You looking regular. But you need to difference how the difference, which one more strong, which one more soft. If you really understand like why you like that, then you can okay, now I can
once you're able to identify, this strong innate self-grasping mind, and once you're able to identify that, really recognize that, and then you can use the countermeasures to really overcome this or dissolve this.
Okay, now that we stop. Not technically have to, he's in New York, you have to go to New Jersey. We have 1 hour away, yes. Yes, you have some question?
Could I ask one question, please? So then is it, the second person and the third person, they're not necessarily two different people? Because it seems to me, how could you have a person that,
No, two different people, yeah.
they are two different people, but, okay, so they are, but how can you?
Because one person have no idea what the tenants mean, nothing idea.
But they still, if they got angry, that
Yeah.
sense of that I would still.
That time even they was angry, then they called them that shume and the take a look and not the shushim carry.
또 슈메네랑 렌지 슈침 레고라.
오늘 그 코로나 시우로 코로나 대가 그 나도 슈침 carry.
So yes, although the second type of the person who are not influenced by philosophical tenets, but when he goes under extreme duress experiences, he gets this very strong sense of innate self, like a strong sense of self-grasping. He experiences that, and so can you put whatever you're just thinking in a form of question, so I can ask Geshe-la, and maybe if you put a question.
Right,
Okay.
So
what would be your question?
So the difference between the second and the third, what I was trying to understand is I couldn't conceive of a person who didn't have some sense of innate self-grasping, and the description of the second person made it seem like, oh yeah, they just
that's normal.
Yeah, but under certain conditions, of course, that would arise. So the difference with the third is that they have, they're influenced by tenets, and they have a sense of a self even when they're not.
Okay,
so yes, both the second and the third, right, have a the beliefs of the self, but in some cases the third one is much worse. Can I add some comment on that? So what really Geshe-la later is yes, both the second and third one would have a a strong sense of self, depending on, especially for the third one, which school of tenets you follow, right? And but the problem is for the third one, you're not just intellectually or conventionally following the self, but especially those what you call this the upper schools, or people who are driven by mistaking philosophical tenets, who were taught mistakenly that there's this very strong self, right? Mistakenly. And so they already have this mistaken view, and plus when you have this innate experience, they have a much more powerful sense of self than people who merely intellectually believing in the self. So the difference is so obvious, especially, later what happens is if you have the wrong sense of the self tenets, and then through that you follow the karma, especially when you engage in actions, especially if you have the wrong or mistaken view of the self, the differences will appear in action, so obvious. I'm sure Geshe-la will later teach you that. For example, so I don't want to.
No, it's okay. It's good.
Okay, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank
I
you.
have a quick question. Can you explain the difference when you're talking about innate grasping of the self? Can you explain the difference, like when I think I don't like that, or this is so bad for me, versus the difference of when you're in extreme emotions, like when you're about to fall, maybe like about to fall off a cliff, and you just feel I'm going to die. What is the difference between those two types, if there's any?
그래서
그런 뒤를 행기는 뒤디 그 뇨알레베 급이야. 저 점지구도 잠바지 아주 뇨아지날야 내주 춘주진의 용서서 there's some 먹이부터 연구를 봐. 지라 춘진의 라베서 나대 가보면 나대 가보 유서 디급이야. 아주 은질 행기 로시고 봐. 은질로 시고 봐. 다데네 강부 터버지나 마스로 지도 잠바야 지금 디 숙침부 시고 봐. 은질로 숙침. 다 디니 받으라 개바 가리어래. 지라지는 막갑자.
대니도 집어로 대니도 시다 나는 제가 게 만들어서 나 저도 집어래. 이제 나한테 바꿔서
So they're pretty much really the same in terms of like a self-grasping. One is they're both influenced by conditions, right? So the level of the condition affect the level of the like self-grasping, but in principle it's still same. The strong sense of self is there, but the level of the anxiety, level of the emotions sometimes play the gravity of the grasping mind. But in kind of a principle, they're both trying to grasp into a self. Same.
Okay.
So when the self-grasping arises, is that one of mental factor of afflictions of the view of perishing aggregates? Is that, or sometimes it's translated to view of personal identity? I think in Tibetan it's called jigulta.
Jigda.
직단.
Is that's
머리바,
the affliction, that's
Marigba.
grasping of the
Yeah.
self?
어디 때는 직단에 저만 직단에 그래. 까지 머리바라 그래.
Yes.
엔들라 그래.
Yes, you're right. The self-grasping mind is also jigda, and also marigba.
ignorant.
Is it the same thing,
It's the same. 그냥 직단.
Geshe-la said yes. Jigda, self-grasping mind, the marigpa, and they all refer to the same thing.
Okay, now we stop. We not talk too much about this.
That's it.
저런 로션아 나도 단다 때리도 봤는데.
Last. 저지 다 저를 타고 싶지 가셔서 합시다. 교통도 나를 빠져봐 기울을 묻힌 스타.
네, 반대 차부쇼 갈래 돼요.
오늘도 다디 저도 당고대 콘주디 교르디나 타니에 되게 니알량아 장국도 아주 교다를 날려 타니에 맞아도
모두 뭐를 해야 돼.
라스 Geshe-la.
너 도시잖아. 안내 편
그러지.
하는데 다음에 편.
라서 thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tenzin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
New Jersey.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
고추장.
Bye.
Okay, now we're going to recite for first thing. Yeah, maybe we don't need to pray. Just pray for the dependent origination for the Rinpoche's passing away. I don't know what you call that. But this is the first week. No, this is second week, right? Second week, right? Well, tomorrow I'm not here, therefore we can do today. Yeah, Bob has that. Bob, you can read. Thank you. Did everybody have that? Yeah.
What page is it?
No, here, look here.
Yeah, we have.
No, not that, you don't have that. You don't see? You don't see? You're the youngest guy today.
I use the computer a lot, so my eyes are terrible.
Oh, okay. I mean, this is really, this is one of the best, poetry for praise for the Buddha Shakyamuni. Some usually poetry too, you're good, hard to, teach for dependent ordination. That's a very important text. Okay.
Okay. He who speaks on the basis of seeing, this makes him a knower and teacher unexcelled. I bow to you, O conquerors, you who saw dependent origination and taught it. Whatever degenerations there are in the world, the root of all these is ignorance. You taught that it is dependent origination, the seeing of which will undo this ignorance. So how can an intelligent person not comprehend that this path of dependent origination is the essential point of your teaching? This being so, who will find, O Savior, a more wonderful way to praise you than to praise you for having taught this origination through dependence? Whatsoever depends on conditions, that is devoid of intrinsic existence. What excellent instruction can there be more amazing than this proclamation? By grasping it in childish strict bondage to extreme views, for the wise this very fact is the doorway to cut free from the net of elaborations. Since this teaching is not seen elsewhere, you alone are the teacher. Like calling fox a lion, for a Tirtika, it would be a word of flattery. Wondrous teacher, wondrous refuge, wondrous speaker, wondrous savior. I pay homage to that teacher who taught well dependent origination. To help heal sentient beings, O benefactor, you have taught with peerless reason to ascertain emptiness, the heart of the teachings. This way of dependent origination, those who perceive it as contradictory or as unestablished, how can they comprehend your system? For you, when one sees emptiness in terms of the meaning of dependent origination, then being devoid of intrinsic existence and possessing valid functions do not contradict. Whereas when one sees the opposite, since there can be no function in emptiness, nor emptiness in what has functions, one falls into a dreadful abyss. You maintain. Therefore, in your teaching, seeing dependent origination is failed, that too not as an utter non-existence, nor as an intrinsic existence. The non-contingent is like a sky flower. Hence there is nothing that is not dependent. If things exist through their essence, their dependence on causes and conditions for their existence is a contradiction. Therefore, since no phenomenon exists other than origination through dependence, no phenomenon exists other than being devoid of intrinsic existence we taught. Because intrinsic nature cannot be negated, if phenomena possess some intrinsic nature, nirvana would become impossible, and elaborations would not be ceased, you taught. Therefore, who could challenge you, you who proclaim with a lion's roar in the assembly of learned ones repeatedly, that everything is utterly free of intrinsic nature, that there is no intrinsic existence at all, and that all functions as this arise in dependence on that, What need is there to say that these two converge without conflict? It is through the reason of dependent origination that one does not lean towards an extreme, that you have declared this excellent reason
is the reason, O Savior,
of your being an
and
unexcelled speaker. All of this is devoid of essence, and from this arises that effect. These two certainties complement each other with no contradiction at all. What is more amazing than this? What is more marvelous than this? If one praises you in this manner, this is real praise, otherwise not. Being enslaved by ignorance, those who fiercely oppose you, what is so astonishing about their being unable to bear the sound of no intrinsic existence? But having accepted dependent origination, the precious treasure of your speech, then not tolerating the roar of emptiness, this I find amazing indeed. The door that leads to no intrinsic existence, this unexcelled door of dependent origination, through its name alone, if one grasps that intrinsic existence, now this person, who lacks the unrivaled entrance, well traveled by the noble ones, by what means should one guide him to the excellent path that pleases you? Intrinsic nature, uncreated and non-contingent, dependent origination, contingent and created. How can these two converge upon a single basis without contradiction? Therefore, whatever originates dependently through primordially free of intrinsic existence appears as if it does possess intrinsic existence. So you taught all this to be illusion-like. Through this very fact, I understand well the statement that to what you have taught, those opponents who challenge you cannot find faults that accord with reason. Why is this so? Because by declaring those chances for ramification and degeneration towards things seen and unseen are made most remote. Through this very path of dependent origination, the rationale for your speech being careless, convictions arise in me also that your other words are valid too. You who speak excellently by seeing as it is, for those who train in your footsteps, all degenerations will become remote, for the root of all faults will be undone. But those who turn away from your teachings, though they may struggle with hardship for a long time, faults increase evermore as if being called forth, for they make firm the view of self. Aha, when the wise comprehend the differences between the two, why would they not at that point revere you from the depths of their being? Let alone your numerous teachings, even the meaning of a small part, those who find entertainment in a cursory way, this brings supreme bliss to them as well. Alas, my mind was defeated by ignorance, though I sought refuge for a long time in such an embodiment of excellence, I possess not a fraction of his qualities. Nonetheless, before the stream of this life flowing towards death has come to cease, that I have found slight faith in you, even this I think is fortunate. Among teachers, the teacher of dependent origination, amongst wisdom, the knowledge of dependent origination, you who are most excellent like the kings of the world, know this perfectly well, not others. All that you have taught proceeds by way of dependent origination. That too is done for the sake of nirvana. You have no deeds that do not bring peace. Alas, your teaching is such, in whoever's ears it falls, they all attain peace, so who would not be honored to uphold your teachings? It overcomes all opposing challenges, it's free from contradictions between earlier and latter parts, it grants fulfillment of being's two aims. For this system my joy increases evermore. For its sake you have given away again and again over countless aeons, sometimes your body and at other times your life, as well as your loving kin and resources of wealth. Seeing the qualities of this teaching pulls hard from your heart, just like what a hook does to a fish. Sad it is not to have heard it from you. The intensity of that sorrow does not let go of my mind, just like the mind of a mother constantly goes after her dear child. Here too, as I reflect on your words, I think blazing with the glory of noble marks and hallowed in a net of light rays, this teacher in a voice of pristine melody spoke thus in such a way, the instant such a reflection of the sage's form appears in my mind, it soothes me, Just as the moon rays heals fever's veins, this excellent system, most marvelous, some individuals who are not so learned have entangled it in utter confusion, just like the tangled bubbles of grass. Seeing this situation, I strove with a multitude of efforts to follow after the learned ones and sought their intentions again and again. At such times I studied the numerous works of both our own Middle Way and other schools. My mind became tormented evermore, constantly by a network of doubts. The night lily grove of Nagarjuna's trees, Nagarjuna whom you prophesied would unravel your unexcelled vehicle as it is, shunning extremes of existence and non-existence, illuminated by the garland of white lights of Chandra's well-uttered insights. Chandra, whose stainless wisdom orb is full, who glides freely across scripture space, who dispels the darkness of extremist hearts, and outshines the constellations of false speakers. When through my teacher's kindness I saw this, my mind found rest at last. Of all your deeds, your speech is supreme. Within that too, it is this very speech. So the wise should remember the Buddha through this teaching of dependent origination. Following such a teacher and having become a renunciate, having studied the conqueror's words not too poorly, this monk who strives in the yogic practices, such is the depth of his reverence for the great seer. Since it is due to my teacher's kindness, I have met with the teaching of the unexcelled teacher. I dedicate this virtue too towards the cause, for all beings to be sustained by sublime spiritual mentors. May the teachings of this beneficent one, till world's end, be unshaken by the winds of evil thoughts. May it always be filled with those who find conviction in the teacher by understanding the teaching's true nature. May I never falter for even an instant to uphold the excellent way of the sage, which illuminates the principle of dependent origination, through all my births, even giving away my body of life. May I spend day and night carefully reflecting, by what means can I enhance this teaching achieved by the Supreme Savior through strenuous efforts to overcome the seance. As I strive in this with pure intention, may Brahma, Indra, and the world's guardians and protectors such as Mahakala unswervingly always assist me.
Okay, now regulator question. Mandala and short mandala, just short dedication.
Okay. Page 39. Saji Hurbi Gypsy Neko Trial Rewriting Jimmy Sunday Jimmy Uwadi Gopaka Jimacher Parshu Jitsu Mame Kutsi Rapin Chinamaka Kune Chochi Padambo Samkane Driven Yasuki Go Idam Guru Mandala Company Atayami. And that snow mountain and circled land source of every benefit and joy, may Lord Tenley Gyatso Chenrezig remain in life till samsara end. Saving the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who extensively clarifies the boundaries and provides emptiness and compassion to the lovers in the hand, Lord Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be fulfilled. Through this virtue may I swiftly, having gained Guru Buddha's state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious Supreme Bodhi mind, may ever unborn arise and when born, never decline, good and peace forevermore. And may Sewe, Keshe, Residue, make him their local Joko, and people follow Jose, Sunway, Dagachi, Kipitsu, and Hapa, Sangami, Shabla, Suwage.
Okay, oh, can you read this? I think you don't have that. This is the Rinpoche's,
Which one?
I call it chant for this.
This one
Correct.
by His Holiness. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll put it on the screen.
Okay. You guys leaving? You guys leaving? So you don't see? Jackie, the youngest guy, doesn't see.
It's a tough life.
Okay, I can write the Tibetan, okay.
So the prayer for the swift return of Lama's Open Rinpoche by His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Okay, there was English Tibetan one.
Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravaka, respecting the Buddhas, the victorious Son, Father, and Sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now.
holding and spreading the Buddha's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make requests. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings you suddenly departed to peace, what a great loss. Nevertheless, through the unceasing truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a renunciation swiftly beam in glory of fortunate disciples.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Good job.
Geshe-la.
I'm sure we get a lot of merit to recite in a dependent origination. Thank you everyone. Good night.
Good night.